So if you're new or visiting today, it's lovely to see you. My name's Paul. I'm one of the ministers here at Immanuel Church. I want to just reflect on that story a little bit, but I want to reflect on that story from the beginning, and I want to connect it through another story in the Bible. And I want to tell a story of, first of all, in 1977. What happened in 1977? Sorry? What started in 1977? Star Wars started in 1977. Star Wars: A New Hope. I was taken to see it when I was a young child, and since then we've had Star Wars 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, because that's weird counting. But I don't know if you know anything about the Star Wars sagas. There's a link at the telling of every single trilogy. There's 3 trilogies in the Star Wars saga. It starts with a retelling of the story every single time. And it's a hook. It says this is a new part of the chapter. This is a new story. And how we're going to denote that is through this. There's a child. We're not entirely sure who the father is. In fact, some of them are orphans anyway, but there's certainly a child. This child has gifts, whether it's Anakin, Luke, or Rey. This child is gifted. The story really is the telling of those 3 characters in trilogies, but it always starts with this orphaned, fatherless child who has a gift. And so when you start to watch the trilogies, you go, oh yes, I connect with that, because that we're going to start to see a story play out, because we've heard this before, because that's the story of Luke, and then that's the story of Anakin, and then later it's the story of Rey in the Star Wars trilogies, trilogy of trilogies. Look, this is not a new pattern of storytelling. God does exactly the same thing. God tells a story. And he sets up this story in the Nativity by casting a hook. And the hook takes the Jewish people way back to the beginning of their story. And so if you were Jewish listening to this Nativity story being told through the gospel writers, you'll go, oh, I know that story. I know that story because it's our story. You see, in the story of the Nativity, we have these 2 women. Both of them shouldn't be having children. One because she's too old and barren, the other one because she's a virgin. Biologically, neither of them should be able to have children. And in doing so, the Jewish people ears prick up and go, that's our story. Because we go back thousands of years and we have this other couple who are too old to have children, Abraham and Sarah. And through Abraham and Sarah, God speaks to them through a visitation of angels and says, you are going to have a child. And of course, they laugh at that point. Sarah laughs and says, I'm far too old, as is he. The angel says, no, this is going to happen. And God chooses you. God chooses you and your descendants. In fact, if you were to look at the stars, try and count them, you can't. Why? It's too many. Such are going to be your descendants. And it will be through your descendants that I will ultimately bring a redemption to my creation. You see, the creation was broken. Creation was broken, and God's plan for it wasn't through some massive, great sort of conquering hero. His plan was through a small group of people, the Jewish people. He said, I choose you, the least and the lost of all people. I'm going to choose you. And currently there is only 2 of you, but you will be a people group through which I bring creation. And so from that, we see the story of Isaac. And then from Isaac, we get Jacob. And Jacob, we get the 12 tribes, the people of Israel. And so when you have this story of Elizabeth and Mary, the Jews go, that's our story. So God is starting to tell the story again. And like the Abraham and Sarah's story, the story is about the story of redemption. This is how God is going to restore. It's going to bring about the broken relationship. It's through your people. And so thousands of years later, we see Mary and Elizabeth And God says, it's now. Now it's happening. This is now. Now, have you ever heard the expression, familiarity breeds contempt? That is so true with Christmas. It's really true. The older we get, the more we fail to see the mystery, the awe, and the wonder in this story. Because we heard it so many times. And we find that if you've ever seen a little child, when they first see something as simple as bubbles or a balloon, and their level of excitement is almost beyond their containment. They're sort of shaking with excitement when they see these sort of little magical bubbles float through the air. They cannot contain themselves. And yet I suspect as adults, you do not have that level of excitement when you see bubbles now. You don't, do you? Because familiarity breeds contempt. You just go, meh, bubbles. Or balloons. Oh, hope they don't burst. That's good. You don't. Because as we get older, we lose our sense of joy. Growing up was never supposed to be something that we're supposed to do. Why Jesus in his teaching says, you need to come to me as a child, because children's joy is ingrained in them. When you grow up, you become far too serious. You start to take everything too seriously in life. My kingdom's not supposed to be like that. My kingdom is supposed to be a place of fun, of joy, of wonder, and of awe. I've been told to tell you, some of you already know, that I, this week, am going to the Falkland Islands for Christmas. I know, all the places to go. Because the regiment that I'm a chaplain to are currently down there, so I'm going down there to take Christmas. Don't worry, James is still here, and he's going to look after you on Christmas Day. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is the lack of light pollution, because I really want to see the stars without the pollution that we get, because I'm quite fascinated by it, and there is a sense of awe and wonder when I get to see the stars in the heaven. I look and I start to get a bit of perspective on just how small I am. And it makes me go, wow, creation is huge. That's one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of Brian Cox, the scientist, because he has this way of just exploring the universe and creation and makes you look at it and go, wow, that is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And I think when we look at the story of Christmas, and I encourage you this year to come back to that childlike joy and wonder, to look at this story and not go, that's a great story, I've heard it so many times, but to actually start to realize what is really going on here, and to let that really impact you with the, wow, he did that for me? He did that for me. You see, the story of Christmas is not about a baby being born. It's about God becoming man, Immanuel, God with us. The child that Mary bore was God himself. God chooses to not come as a king and to rule and reign in that manner. God chose to be born to the least, to be born with nothing and grow up and to change a world from within. He chooses not to say, I want you to come and be like me. I want you to do this to achieve the things that you need to do to get to my kingdom. You know, like standing up here and said, you've got to become like me. You've got to be good. You know, there's this myth that Christians, Christianity is about being good. That's not what Christianity is about. Christianity is about relationship with the Father, with Father God. And he invites you into that relationship through his Son, who comes into the earth and says, come on, I'm going to take you to my Father's kingdom. I'm going to show you where it is. I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to show you how it responds, how it behaves. And it's a kingdom of joy. It's a kingdom of wonder, of awe, where you look and you go, wow, There's this wonderful passage in the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, if you don't know anything about it, it's a vision that John has about one day when God restores creation. It's a vision about John in seeing what goes on in heaven. And he sees this vision of heaven where the angels and then the elders of heaven gather around the throne. And every time they sort of look at God, they fall on their faces and go, wow! Familiarity does never breeds contempt with them. Every time they look at him, they go, wow, you're so awesome. And this Christmas, can I encourage you to not grow up, but to become childlike again, to look at that story and go, wow, God loved me so much. He reached out to me and became a man, not to tell me what I needed to be like, but to show me the way to the Father. So, if I don't see you before, if I don't see you at Christingle, have a very, very happy Christmas. I pray that it is a time of peace for you, but I pray it's a time of wonder and awe as well as you reflect on what God has done, on who he is, and your place in his creation.